G'day golfers. Ever found yourself redirecting blame and making excuses after having an absolute shocker on a golf course? I know that I have. Range was closed, I was a little cold, didn't warm up, I hit it in those 3 old divots. Then we have the podcast for you. We focus on how to fundamentally own your swing. Strike it pure and consistently shoot in the 70s. Be it if you're a weekend hack, retired and playing daily, a school phenom or a tour professional. We present and discuss facts and physics pertaining to golf, trying to keep our ego and opinion at bay. We dispel myths such as keep your head down, bend your knees, or my all-time favourite, game improvement irons. So stop drinking that mythical Kool-Aid and have a sip of ours. I think you'll find it both inspiring and refreshing. I'm Scott Young, founder of Swing, PGA professional and ex-tour player. Welcome to Pivot the Path. G'day golfers and welcome to Pivot the Path. We've had a crazy week in golf with the Olympics still going. Our improvement pivot point comes from no other than Anthony Kim. Our improvement pivot point, it's how you respond when life tests you the most. And that can be in a business forum, in an entrepreneurial forum, or in Anthony Kim's case, life in itself. And so we're going to get into that and dive into that a little more. But suffice to say, what an amazing week in golf. News from the fairways, we had a very quiet golf week. We only had the PGA Tour and LIV, and I wanted to kind of do a little different approach to news from the fairways because I feel that the Olympics, LIV, and PGA Tour have all kind of joined one this week, and I found it a fascinating week in sport. So the Olympics, we had young figure skater Ilya Malinin, who, and I do feel sorry for the kid, he's like 2021, and for the lead up to the games, the interviews from Snoop, the interviews from every media outlet with this kid was going to be a sure thing to win gold. Now they won teams gold, but in the singles men competition, the poor kid didn't perform well, fell 3 times, hadn't done that ever in his career, and literally succumbed to the pressure. And the point we're trying to make is he's an amazing athlete. I think from a personal point of view, brilliant athletes become superstars when they actually do falter. And Jack Nicklaus came second more than 35 times, and arguably it's the second place event where he learned the most. So Ilya, I hope this week you're taking stock of when you're told you're brilliant by every single person in your orbit, perhaps you start to believe it and you just start to get a little bit of a false sense of security. And so I kind of blame the American media for putting that young kid in a position where ultimately they set him up for defeat. And I just know that looking behind him and his family and his upbringing, he is going to come back better than potentially if he won gold. So the news from the fairways is I love watching the Olympics because it's a moment and capture in time where someone's worked hard. I certainly like the individual sports more than the teams because for 4 years they've trained for one moment. And if I look at that young Ilya figure skater, I can't help but feel sorry for him because I just feel the external factors created such an enormity that was almost destined to fail. And so he's going to learn a lot, and I believe he's going to come back and probably be one of the greatest figure skaters ever because of the defeat that he had in the 2026 Olympics. And if I look at all the biathlons, the luge, the skeleton, all these single events where these athletes have peaked their performance for the last 2 or 3 weeks. To me, that's as a sport what I love, when an individual athlete really takes stock. And then we parlay that to Collin Morikawa in the PGA Tour, and he won Pebble Beach, first time he's won in 2 years. And then just the most amazing story that I hope all the more traditional media outlets pick up is that Anthony Kim won the LIV event shooting 9 under in round 4. Now, as we've talked about, LIV has now changed to be 4-round events, so now they can get world ranking points. Anthony Kim, for those who don't know, 20 years ago was the young up and coming to really push Tiger. And then about 16 years ago, the poor kid snapped and dabbled with his demons and fell into kind of drug and alcohol abuse. I don't begin to even touch that. I don't know Anthony. I don't know what transpired. But suffice to say that when he came back, every pundit really had a go at him and said, "Oh, mate, you're washed up. What are you doing? Liv's struggling. Liv's grasping at straws." No, Liv saw an opportunity to put a superstar back on the stage. And I think the story is real. And most families I know have battled with mental illness in one form or another. And so for Anthony Kim to battle drug and alcohol abuse, and a pretty substantial battle that was, and to come back, kid hasn't played a golf tournament for 14 years. It's been 16 years since he's played and won an event. To shoot 9 under, hold off guys like John Rahm, DeChambeau, and win the LIV event on the weekend was nothing, in my opinion, nothing short of absolutely extraordinary. And so what I'd recommend is just spend 5 minutes Googling his journey and his golf swing. It's a little quirky. It's always been a little quirky, but the parallels to Collin Morikawa are unbelievable. What I was hoping to do was actually look at Collin Morikawa, and I don't think I've ever done this on our podcast. I don't ever compare any golfer to a tour player, because generally speaking, a tour player has far more range of motion in their joints, right? But Collin and Anthony Kim are quite interesting that they swing the club very similarly, and especially Collin Morikawa, who basically on his downswing swings over the top of his upswing, so is destined to hit basically little butter fades. And it kind of goes against what I try to teach, which is when you swing up on one angle, I like most golfers to swing underneath on the down angle, or people say plane, but I don't really love plane. It's just measuring angles, right? Golf's all about angles. And so in looking at Collin and Anthony, AK, it's really similar. It's really interesting that they've got similar parallels, both won. And Anthony Kim, who's had a 16-year hiatus, still rips a golf ball. Okay, so what I've got is a side-by-side of Anthony Kim and Collin Morikawa, and I think it's really important, and this is a really lovely little facet that you can use in your own golf game. The first thing I do with a new client is I look at the exit point of the golf shaft. And if we look at Anthony Kim and Collin here, we'll see that when they're post-impact, their exiting golf shaft is underneath their lead shoulder. So their left shoulder socket, they're both right-hand golfers for those who are listening, and the club's exiting about half a foot below their lead shoulder. So as a right-handed golfer, their left shoulder. So we know they've released the club. For most people, and it's almost identical, they're positioned. In fact, Collin and AK have an almost identical golf swing, with Collin being a little more what we call over the upswing. So what I'm talking about here is something I do with a lot of my golfers in here. Again, for a new golfer who I've never met, the first thing I do is look at how the club exits. And when that club exits the golf shaft more vertical than the angle of their shoulders, I know they're holding the club open. And then as a golf instructor, you can work backwards. And this is 100%. This is never wrong. If a golfer exits the golf shaft, or you see that lead elbow exiting before a golf shaft, people say chicken wing, but it's just that elbow opening, we know the golf club's opening through impact. And then you can work backwards and say, well, why would they open through impact? If their hips are stalling at impact and their shoulders are spinning at impact, the club is going to move left. And so it's an attempt for a golfer to hold the face open. So what you can do is use this in your own golf swing to get an understanding of what you do and how to improve it. So with these two, they exit the club beautifully below their lead shoulder. So they're releasing the club, they're adding speed, and we know they're going to be a phenomenal ball striker as the club is exiting low. But if you both look, and I'm looking more here at Collin Morikawa, what I get people to do to understand their own golf swing is to start so the lead arm is parallel to the ground. And then in our on-form app here, I get little circles. And what I'm going to do is put a little circle on Collin's, the club butt. That's the end of the club. And I'm drawing circles and I'm watching Collin's, basically the club butt, the end of the golf club. I'm watching it at the top of his golf swing. So I've got a circle on his golf club halfway back, and then I've got a circle on his club butt halfway up, and then I've got a circle on his club butt at the top. And you can do this with your own golf swing. Now, what I pride our community to do is if they're swinging the club up on one angle, they come underneath the angle into impact. And if you do that, we know you can hit draws and fades at will effortlessly. But what you'll see in Collin Morikawa is that when he gets to the top, his hands drift over and over the top of his up plane upswing. And what that means is his torso is going to invariably swing a little faster than his hips are opening. And so if I look at Collin, I can see how much his trail hip really collapses in his right knee. And this is not in a negative light at all. This guy is a phenomenal shaper of a golf ball. But because Collin swings up on one angle, and then the club butt is drifting over the top of the upswing, we know he's going to have a predisposition to hit fades more often than not. And what that means is if we look at his hips, okay, as I fast forward this, we can see how much his hips start stalling and his torso takes over. So Collin's always going to be a fader of a golf ball. So is Jack Nicklaus. There's no negative or positive connotation to that. But what we like to do in the swing community is be able to shape the ball both ways. And I think what this is trying to allude to is get to know your golf swing. AK does a similar thing, but AK basically goes up on one line, down on the same line. And we know that if you have a swing that works up on one angle, and then the hands drift over and outside on the down angle, that's a result generally caused by that torso moving. And if you just look at Collin here into impact, you'll see how much his hips, or how quiet his hips are compared to how fast his hands and torso's moving. So he is a torso-based individual. I would look at his external rotation of his right hip. When we see that trail knee really bend forward, we know that that external rotation of that right hip's asking for more motion. If it can't get it through the hip, it gets it through the knee. Why do I know about this? It's exactly me, right? So my right knee just kicks inward because I lack external rotation in my hip. I work on it all the time. It's something that I really struggle with. And it would appear Collin does the same thing. So at impact, he's had to really collapse that right leg, which allows his hips to gain a little more motion. And so looking at someone and looking at your own up angle versus down angle, you can get an idea if you're up angle and then you come under that on the way down, you're going to be able to shape the ball both ways pretty easily. But if your up angle is superseded by a down angle that moves over the top of that, then golf's going to be a little more difficult. And it's a really lovely way to get to know your swing. I thoroughly recommend you don't look at too many tour players, get to know your swing. But looking at and again, it's the back of the club, so it's the club butt. So as I just grab a club butt here. Okay, so all we're doing is tracing this end of the club. And if you can get to know what you do with your golf club on the way up and on the way down, you can get to start to understand a bit of macro plane. And what we want is we'd love that club to drop just gently underneath on that way down to allow you to come from the inside more generally, more specifically and simply to allow you to hit a draw. And as we've talked about, when you open your stance for your face alignment with alignment at address, then you can hit that fade with the same golf swing. So the whole idea of today's improvement pivot point is, again, strongly recommend you don't start going down the rabbit hole comparing yourself to a tour player, because how one's physiology is unknown with a tour player. But I know looking at Collin, that right hip must be externally tight because that right knee collapses and he just gets a little bit on top of it, which predetermines him to hit a little fade. So where Collin struggles a little bit, and it was really ironic and power to his mental toughness on Sunday, is it was a windy day. So he would have had to have worked really hard to get that draw going if the breeze was left to right, to ensure that he can hold the breeze up. So power to you. Because you're a player who gets on top of the ball a little bit, you're going to play a ton of fades, and we know to win a golf tournament, you've got to be able to shape the ball both ways. So really hats off to you, Collin. You've really worked hard on your ball control with a swing that pretty well determines a little fade. So again, what we thought we'd do is you can learn from that, right? Learn what an up motion looks like on the club butt. Learn what a down motion looks like. If the club butt is moving over the top of the upswing, that's going to have a predisposition to being a torso-based swing with a little fade. And if the club comes underneath, you're going to generate more speed, hit it further, and generally be able to shape the ball both ways. Again, and parallel that to how does the club exit through impact. And any questions, just fire them through to us and we'd love to help, right? We're all a community and we're all trying to help one another understand our swing. Beauty golfers, look, thanks for listening. Remember, you can absolutely own your swing with the work you put into the game off the golf course. Newsletter drops Friday. Thanks so much for your time. Watch the end of the Olympics, and until next week, we'll see you later. Cheers.